recording? It is. Okay. Okay, so the scheduler, there's two ways to get to the scheduler. You should have had a desktop icon called xSchedule installed, which you can double click on, or from within xLights, at least in the Windows version. I'm not sure this works yet. In fact, I'm pretty sure it doesn't work yet in the Macintosh version. You can come down and click on xSchedule here, and it will kick the scheduler off. So I'm going to get out of xLights, because you don't need xLights running to run the scheduler. Now this is what you'll get when you first kick off the scheduler. By default, it should inherit your show directory, but you can go up here and set your show folder. Your show folder needs to contain your networks.xml file, and if it doesn't, you'll get a message down here on the bottom in red saying that the networks.xml file is not found. If it doesn't find the networks.xml file, then it doesn't know how to send the data out to your controllers, and so although you can still set the schedule up, it won't be able to play anything, so it's not particularly useful. Okay, I'm going to walk through it in a kind of, hopefully a semi-structured manner. I'm going to start with the options. Some of these options are going to seem a little weird, and we'll come back and we'll cover them later and show you how they get applied. So to start with, there's this advanced mode option. By default, it'll be in simple mode. You can still use the advanced options in simple mode. It just requires you to do some right clicking to get to it. In advanced mode, it assumes it's in advanced mode, and so it will tend to open up more complicated dialog boxes. Most people would probably just use it in simple mode. If you're just playing your show, just playing an FSCQ file and some music, etc., you can pretty much do all of that in simple mode. If you want to do some advanced stuff like, you know, play videos at the same time, control projectors, run processors, things like that, you probably want to put it in advanced mode because you'll find it a little bit easier. The send data when not running sequence, if you check this on, then the xSchedule is basically going to be pumping out data to your controllers all the time. If you leave the option off, then it will only pump out data to your controllers when something is running. Although there's an anomaly with background sequences, but we'll come to that. The artnet synchronization protocols. So if you have set up the artnet or the E131 synchronization protocols, which I doubt you have, if you set those up in xLights, then you'll probably want to check this checkbox so that the scheduler also plays those synchronization protocols. The only time you really want to use these is if you're running a really large, real large number of, guys, you want to go on mute if you're not already? Yeah, if you're running a real large number of universes, E131 can get a little laggy if you're getting up around 100, 200 universes. And if you've got controllers to support the synchronization protocols, it makes your display still look very snappy despite the number of packets being pushed around. The web server port, by default, the scheduler is actually a web server as well. And by default, it tries to listen on port 80, which is the standard web port that you would expect. That enables you to come in here and type localhost, and you get the default player come up, which has been served up by the scheduler. If you're running something else on your machine, or you want to run on a non-standard port, then you can change this to be 8080 or 81 or 88 or whatever you want it to be. You just need to be careful, obviously, you don't pick a port that something else is using. The projector space, this is where you set up the details for any projectors that you have that you want to control via PJ Link. And it's simple as adding it, giving the projector a name. I don't know, maybe it's your garage door projector. It's got an IP address. And it may optionally have a password. The protocol allows for it, so I let you enter it. I don't keep that password secure, so don't trust me. I don't think anyone cares. And you can add as many of these as you want. You need to add at least one projector here if you want to use PJ Link, because otherwise it won't know how to reach your projectors. Down here, we define our buttons. So our buttons appear down here. You can see there's several of them down here. You can actually add as many of these as you like, and you can customize them to do pretty much any action relating to playing your show. You can't create buttons down here to help you edit and set your show up. But once your show's set up, there's a whole bunch of actions that you can add down here to control the songs, to cause them to loop, to unloop, to pause. There's a whole swag of them. And I will come back to this, and I will walk you through the process and give you a feeling for how you go about doing this. The web directory by default is xSchedule web. So when you install xLights, if you go in here, there's this folder called xSchedule web, and this is where the website is that you can access from your phone or from a computer, etc., to control your show. If you want to set up your own website, you can absolutely go ahead and do so. Just create another directory under here, and then you go and build all the necessary files that you're interested in having, and that way you don't have to delete the one that we give you. And then you can come in here and say, actually, my website's in my web or something, and we'll then serve that website up when you want to access it. So if you want to build your own control panel, etc., that's how you can do it. If you click on the API only checkbox, what this will do is it'll actually disable the web server from serving up any pages. So it makes it a little bit less open, but it still allows you to remotely control it with APIs. So I posted a project the other day where I'd used an Arduino to set up some physical buttons and control my show. Well, in API only mode, I would still be able to control my show using the web API. But if I tried to browse to it and access the schedule, it wouldn't enable me to, because that part would be turned off. You can also optionally set a password. And what the password does is when you go to the website, it will actually require you, and there's a protocol that's involved, to set a password. And then it will basically enable the website on the machine that's entered that password. Again, the password's not a super secure password, but it does allow you to have people potentially accessing your network and prevent them from just casually getting in and changing your show. And timeout in minutes, I don't even remember what timeout in minutes was. I don't know, I'll have to go back and look that up. I'm sure I added it for a good reason, I just don't remember what it was. Okay, so that's our options. There are also some other things that you can do here. So one thing you can do is you can create virtual matrices. So in my show here, let me just bring up my show. So virtual matrices are used to actually display something on your screen on the computer you're playing your show from. And the reason you'd want to do that is if that screen was then fed out to a projector and you wanted to display, you know, you can actually, and you can do this on the FPP as well, you can actually sequence your projector like it's just a matrix in your show. You obviously don't want to make the resolution too high because it's going to make your channel count absolutely massive. But it can be an interesting way to actually incorporate your projector in your show at certain points when you're not using it to show maybe a movie file or something else. And the way you do that is you have to describe it. So I actually do have a matrix here. It's 18 high by 50 wide. And so I'm going to create a virtual matrix here, and I'm actually going to render this data up on the screen. Actually, no, it's not going to work. But anyway, so you give the matrix a name. So I'm just going to call it VM for virtual matrix. You give it a height and a width. You can rotate it, so you can cause the image to be rotated left or right. You can decide how it gets rendered. These rendering styles will basically, as the image gets scaled up, we have to scale it up somehow. So we can either do a blocky scale up, or we can try and smooth it all out. And so you can choose the scaling quality. Normal basically makes it quite blocky, and high tries to blur it all in. And then you choose whereabouts in the channel data you want to read the data from. So if I was using this matrix here, I'd come here and look at its start channel, and its start channel in this case is 5730. So I would say it's going to read the data out of 5730. The height is 18, the width is 50. Now, the challenge with this matrix is the way these matrices work, because it's actually a display element, it's not meant to map data from another element, it's meant to be sequenced as its own element. It has a very special format. So it basically is a matrix which starts in the top left. It has one, no fold, so one string equals one row across the tree. So this in theory has 18 starting, so strand 1 will start at the top left and move across, and then strand 2 will start here and move across, and so forth. And so because I'm mapping this to a tree which has actually got zigzags, sorry, not to a tree, to a matrix which has got zigzags, this data is going to render a little bit strangely, but you'll get the idea. And then you'll want to position the window. So if you're using a projector, you probably want to move this off this screen and onto your projector screen and make it full screen. But this is where you control how it, whereabouts it displays. And a topmost window forces it to always be on top, so nothing can get on top of it. And you just click OK. Now, whenever you make a change like this, you can see the red save icon tells me that it's unsaved, and I can just click on that to save it at any time. Now, the other thing that we may want to do is describe my actual matrix, the one that we were just looking at then. If you want to do things like render text onto the matrix at playtime, so you want to render the current date or the number of days till Christmas, or do some sort of countdown, which is actually a real countdown to a date, you're going to want to render text out of the scheduler, not in your sequence, because obviously your sequence, whatever data you render is rendered on that day and doesn't change when you play it. So if you're going to do a countdown to Christmas, you're basically going to have to change your show every day to be slightly different with a different number of days to Christmas. The way we do this, it's a little bit different than the previous one, because here we actually have to describe the element that we're going to render data onto. So this one here will be my matrix. And now I need to describe exactly how my matrix is formed. So in my case, I have 3 strings. Each string has 300 pixels. There's 6 strands per string. The start channel, we just said, was 5730. And the starting location in this case is the bottom left, and it's a horizontal matrix. The strings run left to right across. So we click OK there and we save that. And that will let me render text onto that matrix from the scheduler. All right, so that's that one, that's that one. A background playlist we'll come back to. A background playlist lets you set a playlist that always plays. Not only does it always play, but it always renders last, which means whatever is in that playlist will always be displayed. It's a great place to put things like your tune to sign and things like that, and you know that they're always going to play. At the moment, it plays all the time. I actually think that's a problem. It really should play every time something else is playing, so I'll probably be fixing that. The one final thing on the edit screen is output processing. And the concept of output processing is that having prepared all the data, ready to send out to the controllers, this gives me one last opportunity to tinker with the data before I send it out. And there are a number of ways in which you might want to tinker with the data. So the first one is a remap. This also, I believe, FPP can do. And this is useful if you're, I don't know, you're running an LOR controller and you've got a dead channel. Let's imagine my LOR is my first controller and channel 7's dead. So I want to take the data from channel 7 and I want to map it to, I don't know, maybe I'm not using 15. And so I'm going to move the element that was plugged into channel 7 onto 15. It's only one channel. And I'm going to say, I don't know, that's my tree due to dead output. And I save it. Okay, and now what that will do is it will read the data from channel 1 in the FSCQ file and it will copy it to channel 15. And so it will write out that data. Now, whatever was in channel 15 will, of course, be lost. But in this case, I didn't have anything on channel 15 before, so I don't really care about that. And it allows me to, without having to go back and re-render all of my sequences, I can now just go and fix that controller and get my show back up and running. And then I know why I did it, because it's here. And so when I do go back and fix it up, I can come back in here and I can delete the remapping. A set basically allows you to go in and say, I want to actually override the data for one or more channels. So let's imagine for the moment that channel 5730, which is going to be the bottom left pixel on my matrix, channel 2's dead. Right, the second channel's dead, so the green's not working. And so I want to kill that pixel off because I don't want it to be looking like it's the wrong color. So I can come in here and say from channel 5730 for 3 channels, set the value to 0. And I'm going to say it's a dead pixel on my matrix. And so when the data is sent out, it's just going to blank out that one pixel so that it doesn't put the wrong color up. So when my matrix all turns red, when it turns white, I don't end up with a magenta or a pixel in the bottom left, which just might drive me nuts. Dim allows me to go in and basically choose a set of channels. It might be my megatree, or it might be a whole block of RGB channels, and say, I want to dim those channels. Don't want to do it on my controller, don't want to do it in X-Lights and set a whole bunch of dimming curves. I just know this block of channels, I want to run at 50%. So I can come in here and I can say, starting at channel 100 for 1,000 channels, I want to run it at 50% brightness. And so that data will be reduced in value by 50% before it's written out to those elements. Dim white then is slightly different. So dim white, notice it doesn't actually ask you for a channel count, it asks you for a node count. And the reason for that is dim white is designed only to be used with pixel data. What it's designed to do is it's designed to check the pixel data and spot any pixel that's white. And by white, I mean the red, the green, and the blue have the same value. That value might be 1, or the value might be 255. And what it's going to do is it's going to dim those pixels and those pixels only. So if you've got a tree that when it's all red, it's fine. When it's green, it's fine. When it's blue, it's fine. But when you put it on full white, it starts to have power issues and it fades away. And so you just want to dim it down when it's white so that it stays within the power envelope of your power supplies. This is how you can do it. And given that's turning on 3 colors, the tree's a lot brighter when it's white as well. So it's actually not that noticeable to people that it's actually dimmed down. So again, I can come in and I can say from channel 2000 for 100 nodes, set the brightness at 50%. And it will just dim those channels down on the fly. Color order. The reason for color order is, if you've got a Falcon controller, you can pretty much do everything you want to do with virtual strings on the controller and set it all up. But if you're running some older controllers that don't have those sort of capabilities, and you got your big tree and one of your ribbons dies, and so you go on, you get another one out, and it turns out to have a different color order, and your controller doesn't support the ability to mix color orders. Maybe you're replacing one pixel in the middle of a long string, and it happens to be a different color order. Well, this lets you go in and choose a number of nodes and shuffle the color orders. So again, I can come in and I can say, starting at channel 2000 for 100 pixels, take the data that should be in 1, 2, 3 order and swap around the last 2. So it turns it into 1, 3, 2. And there's a whole bunch of different orders that you can put it in here. And I replace pixel with, what's this going to RBG order? Okay, and so just those pixels will have their data shuffled before we write that data out to the controller. Very powerful, particularly if you're running older controllers. The final one is reverse. And reverse is really about, again, this works on pixels, and it's about saying, I want to reverse a set of pixels. So I might be writing 100 pixels out, but instead of writing them out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I want to write them out 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now again, more advanced controllers, you can do this on the controller, but if you're running an older controller and you can't, well, then here's your option. You go in here, you start with 70, you say, I'm going to do 10 pixels, and this is a reverse. And it will just reverse that pixel data between those channels. So you can add as many of these as you like. You're not limited to one of each. You can add as many as you like to get your show working exactly the way you want. Now, you probably don't want to do lots and lots of this. All of these things come with some overhead. It has to be applied at runtime, not at render time. So you probably don't want to go to town on here, but simple things definitely work really well, and it can get you out of a tight spot on a controller that maybe doesn't support what you want it to do. Okay, so I cancelled out of that because I really don't want it doing all of that in the background. So that's all of our edit except for our add playlist and our background playlist, which we will come back to. Under the tools menu, we have our view log. Yes, the scheduler also logs an awful lot, including a whole bunch of web requests, etc. So if you do decide to go down the path of building your own website or building your remote control, you can come in here and see the interactions that are occurring from the website, which can help you debug your program or whatever you're doing. It also has a check schedule, which lets you go in and it will identify some common errors that might occur in your setup and flag them. Much like check sequence, so it'll come in, it'll tell you which IP address it's going to go out of. It'll tell you if you have any inactive outputs set up in your networks file, just in case you didn't realize that you deactivated a certain output. Many of these are actually identical to the errors that you would get in xLite, such as multiple outputs sending to the same destination. If you've got duplicate playlist names, I don't stop you from having duplicate playlist names, and given that a lot of the commands use things like playlist names and step names and the like to find things, having duplicates will cause you problems. It will cause things not to necessarily work the way you expect. So there's checks for a whole bunch of duplicates. Empty playlists, again, not a big deal, but kind of weird. Empty steps, the same sort of things. Steps where you have multiple FSCQ files, not something that's illegal, and I'll talk to you about why, but potentially not something you intended. Same with steps which have multiple audio files. The schedule will actually let you do that, and it will mix the audio together and play both songs at once, but it's probably not what most people intend. The schedule will let you play multiple videos at once, but once you get up around the sort of the 6 mark, it really grinds. Processing videos is a very expensive process. I've done some work on trying to improve it, but it's not there yet. So if you're going to run lots and lots of videos, it's going to run slowly. Your machine's going to basically run at 100% on the one thread that does the video processing. So not a great idea. Duplicate matrix names, again, duplicate names are a problem. If you've got a matrix larger than the number of available channels, that's a bit weird. Doesn't make any sense. It won't display properly. Same with virtual matrices and so on. Multiple schedules with the same priority. We'll come to priority soon, but conceptually, priority plays a role in the scheduler in a number of different areas where you're able to set up multiple things to happen at the same time, and you need to be able to, or the scheduler needs to be able to determine which one takes priority. So in the case of rendering, which one should I render last versus first? Because obviously the one that renders last will take precedence when it comes to writing data out. When you've got multiple schedules which have triggered at the same time, we need to know which of those schedules I should pay attention to. And so priority becomes a factor, and having multiple schedules with the same priority will cause, basically, it ends up being somewhat random around which one's going to be chosen. Not having a password on the website, I give you a warning to say, well, maybe you want to set it. Having a non-standard web port, a warning, again, there's nothing wrong with doing it, but it may not be something you meant to do, and so forth. No web folder, missing indexes, all common problems. Missing reference files. So this will go through and check that all the FSCQs and all the audio files and all the things and the video files that you've referenced are actually where they're meant to be. And if they're not, it'll flag them as errors so that you can go and fix them up, because obviously they're not going to play if that's the case. Okay, what else have we got? The web interface. So this will launch the web interface on your machine. If you've forgotten how to get to it, you can get to it that way. And there's an import xLights playlist. So if you've got a playlist from last year and you want to import what you had in xLights last year, you can use this import xLights playlist and it will bring the playlist in. It does its best. It creates all the songs and the videos and everything else. You will probably need to tinker with it to get it to be exactly the way you want it, but I do my best to reproduce what you had. The modes menu, so this is where you get to decide whether it's standalone, whether it should be an FPP master. Now, if it's an FPP master, it will issue exactly the sort of synchronization packets that FPP does. And so then if you've got some FPPs that's set up as remotes, as long as the FSCQ file name matches, then and that FPP is set in remote mode, then that FPP should basically remain synchronized with the scheduler here, and it will control it, and you can have as many as you like in that mode. In FPP remote mode, the reverse happens. So you'll have an FPP out there that will be running in master mode. It will be sending out those synchronization packets. And in this case, we listen for those synchronization packets and we do our best to play what we're told to play based on it. Setting it up in remote mode is a bit more tricky because you obviously need to make sure that only the things that you need are set up in your networks file, because it's going to basically process the networks file and it will send out data and the like if things are there, which maybe you're sending out from another controller. So it is a little bit more fiddly to set up, and I need to spend some time with the manual guys to get a manual together that really explains how to set that up. But if you just want to run your audio off your computer instead of off your Pi, you can use the remote mode to do that. If you want to drive your projector off your computer rather than off your Pi, again, you can do that. All those things. So it's a lot of talk and no playlist. So let's add a playlist. You can do that via the edit menu. You can do it from this add button down here, or you can right click here. And you can add a playlist here. This is also how you can do the advanced mode if you're in simple mode. So let's add a playlist. In simple mode, you can come in here and you can give it a name. My playlist. You can tell it that the first step in the playlist should play once only, or the last step should play once only. And so when it's in looping mode, it will loop between those two and leave the first and the last one out, or depending on which one you've chosen. I probably at some point will allow you to add multiple steps, but for now it's just one at each end. You can then go in and you can add in your various things in one of two ways. You can either click the add buttons down here, or if you really wanted to, you could come over to your show folder, documents, my lights, home. So you could come over here, find an FSCQ file, and I can just drag it over here and drop it. So there's several ways for you to do this. Oh, we're going to have to move on. We'll quickly do this and then we'll come back around again. Yeah, I do want to delete it. So the other way is you add the FSCQ files. Again, you can come down here and you can select multiple and click OK, and it will add each one of them in. It will show you how long they are. You can reorder them. I really didn't want, actually want them in number order. So you can just drag it up and put it on the top of the one that you want to appear before it. And so now they're in order, and that's the order that they'll play. And then the details of configuring it are all over here on the right-hand side. Using the simple mode, you can add an FSCQ. You can add a step which has an FSCQ file and a video. And the way that works is you come over here and you add a video file, and we'll come back and we'll talk about that. You can also add just audio only. So if you want to have a part of your show where you just play Christmas carols, you can do that there as well. So I'm going to cut it at that point. We'll jump out, stop the video and reset it, and then we'll come back and we'll start talking through each of these steps and all the properties and how you configure those.